Check, 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 check. If you are a real estate agent or business owner that is struggling with a digital content strategy from brand to execution to operations, maybe hiring people to help you do the things you don't want to do so that you can do the things that you're really good at, you definitely came to the right place. My name is Justin Konikow. This is the Prime People podcast where we bring on the best people in the world to dig in deep on topics, and we host it live. So we are currently on the YouTubes, we are on the Facebooks and the LinkedIns, and it all goes through StreamYard. So if you're on any of those platforms, jump into the comments, let us know you are here. I see you, John. I see you, Facebook user. If you're on Facebook, you got to let StreamYard know who you are in order to jump into the actual comments. Producer eScarf is here as always, running the back end. He'll drop some links to help you get there and make sure that it is there. So on the back end group as well, Eric's about to share the StreamYard link. So we have a private group. It's called Practical and Tactical. And in that group, you get a live in-studio link. This is a collaborative group. We're going to have people pop in and out of the episode and ask questions to Kat Torre from SERHANT. So people know Ryan and I are super tight. Been working with him and his entire crew for a couple years. They've been instrumental in creating this person that you see in front of you right now. And Kat is one of the people who is a shining star. She kills it in all things branding, storytelling, leverage, and operations. So this is going to be a very unique episode because a lot of times we're talking content creation, social media, but there's not that link to creating the team and the plan around it. So I'm very, very excited. Again, hit that subscription button. Make sure you share this with all of the people that you know will get value from this. And let's jump right into the episode. Welcome to the Prime People podcast, where we cover all things that got us to where we are today, our team building strategies, the marketing and sales tips that we've learned through thousands of transactions, productivity tips, ways to really just hold yourself accountable to accomplishing what you want to accomplish, and all things content creation, personal development, and not to mention we have some of the best guests on the planet. We definitely do, and Kat is one of them. Hey, Kat, thanks for being here.
Hey, Justin, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no problem at all. We were talking about how we both have a background in hospitality and how you learned everything that you know now from Denny's. So let's dig into that. Let's walk through kind of how you got to where you are today, and then we'll dig into the topics of branding and operations and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so glad you started with a softball question. My whole story from the last 15 years, my introduction to hospitality was very young. I started off as a busgirl at my local Denny's. I'm from California originally, grew up in a very, very small town in the East Bay. And it's funny, like hospitality moves really, really quickly, and it's all about the guest experience. It's all about the customer experience. And I learned that from a very, very young age, from working as a busser, then working as a food runner, then a server, and then a host. And what I really found when I started working as a host and like dealing with special events and management, that's really where I found like my niche of being able to like guide the guests from the experience, from the first time that they walk into a restaurant and they soak up the ambiance and they meet the staff and then they experience the food. Like food and hospitality, it's a very like intimate kind of setting, and it's all about like long-term and relationship building. And so, leveraging my background in hospitality, marketing and communications and branding, and be able to create that like engaging, nurturing, like long-term experience and relationships was like a natural segue. So that's kind of how, I got into marketing. I went to school for it. I studied it. I've worked in, from corporate to startup, and now with SERHANT in the last 6 months, and getting to like meet you guys, amazing people. And it's been great. And so obviously like marketing, it's a huge, huge umbrella, right? Mm-hmm. And there's so much that you could focus on. You could focus on brand, you could focus on design, websites, ads, influencers, PR, like
for sure.
It's overwhelming, right? And so really what I've found and like what I've like niched down into, and what like, the work that we do in Pro, like you're one of our ambassadors in that program, is focusing on the branding. Because all of the questions that you get, how many times do I post to social? Sure. What do I post on social? How do I pitch myself to the press? what does my website need to look like? Do I need to hire a social media? Like all of these questions, if you truly know who you are, you know your brand, you have that North Star, you know the answers to all of those questions. And then the rest of it is just about being consistent and holding yourself accountable. So really kind of that's been like my journey thus far, and why like I love, what I do, and I love helping you guys and like truly like transform the lives and the businesses of the people that we work with. So it's really fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, there is a passion and a purpose behind it, right? And going back to what you were saying about the Denny's and the hospitality background,
Yeah.
some of the best people I've ever found have come from hospitality, again, because they've put in thousands of reps with people. They can, deal with different personalities and adversity in a way that a lot of the other
Yes.
people that haven't just had that experience are able to. And you really simplify the process. And I've seen that internally. And that's where I don't think people really understand the relationships that we have with the crew. And that's why I like bringing you on, is you really do see the development of personalities, brands, executions, and what works for Justin doesn't work for Mark Arnstein. It doesn't work for Ali Wise, but what works for Ali doesn't necessarily work for me. And it's the uniqueness that we all have that is our superpower. But man, it's so complicated for agents out there. They get paralysis by analysis. They don't have the right camera. They don't have the right headphones. They don't know where to start. There's too many platforms. If you're watching this and you feel that way, let me know in the comments. Today's a good example of that on my side. Left my laptop at home, left my primary camera at home. My mouse isn't really working. There's all kinds of stuff happening that nobody's aware of, but we committed to this. I press record, and we're going to make the content fire, because I know at my core, it's, sales and branding or real estate and media is my thing. And I'm not worried about all the noise. So let's walk in that from the beginning. Brand new agent, we're going to go through the branding piece first. Like, how do they even begin establishing their why or their brand identity when they don't have a cat in their back pocket?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I always find that, especially with new agents and especially salespeople in general, it's sometimes really hard to see yourself very clearly. So what you can do is lean on your existing network and the people around you. So one of the top tips that I always recommend is to pull the people that are around you, pull your family and friends, pull your colleagues, both former and present, and just do blind polls on social and really ask them and put it out there. What do you think of when you think of me? What are the adjectives that come to mind? Why are we friends? Why are we colleagues? What about me attracted you to me and has kept you like in my stratosphere? Like what about it? And you'd be really enlightened, because what they're going to say is not revolutionary, but they're going to say it in a way that you would have never thought about it, and it's going to spark ideas and encourage self-reflection and really get that conversation going and give you a place to start. Right? Because the whole idea of like, what's my why? What's my wall? Like Ryan talks about in his book, Salt Lake SERHANT. Those are big questions, but you have to answer them. You have to have that clarity. So start with the people that you know and help them get the ball rolling with you. And eventually what you'll notice is that they all start to say the same thing. There's going to be like common threads that go throughout. So like when I went through this exercise, right? I practice what I preach, and I do it often, a few times a year, because obviously your brand evolves as you evolve, as your network evolves. And the most recent polling that I did was actually a couple weeks ago. And it was funny. One of my former colleagues at a startup I worked for, they were in the interior design space. She's like, Kat's one of those people where, some people will thrive on leash. They thrive with a bunch of structure. They thrive with hand holding and accountability. And they're like, Kat's not like that. Kat's the type of person that thrives off leash. And when I read
That's
that,
amazing.
right, I would have never used that analogy at all, ever. And I'm like a very good wordsmith, but I would have never thought about that. And so I asked my former colleague, Mahi, and that's what she said. And it made me laugh, just like it made you laugh, because
well, I know
true.
you, right? And it's
You
funny
know
because
me.
before I knew you to this point, I would have said, like, you present yourself very professionally. You are a wordsmith, like you're a tactician, but you do have this kind of ability when you're in a group of even 20 or 30 people of pushing, right? And really kind of helping people break through things where they don't want to ask themselves the right questions, or maybe they're kind of beating around the bush on something. You're just like, no, let's take off all chains and let's get to the core of it, which is pretty cool, because I wouldn't have known that about you. But let's reverse it. Let's give the people an example of how to do this, right? So everybody pay attention, grab a pen and paper, and she's going to give you an actual exercise that you can do at home right now. So, knowing me a little bit, I guess, what would be the adjectives and descriptions that you'd write around me other than crazy and highly caffeinated?
I would say you're in all places at all times, and that speaks to your and of media. my mental image of you, Justin, is with those headphones, because
Yeah, that's
all
funny.
of your profile pictures, right? You're always connected, you're always in tune, you're always like, you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And you're innovative. You're always trying new things. You're not afraid to say, hey, I don't know this new tech, or I don't know this new strategy, but I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to experiment with it and remain curious and remain motivated to constantly want to improve and innovate. That's kind of my overall impression of you. How accurate is that? How does it
Yeah,
feel?
well, so we did the audit, right? So when I was going through the brand stuff with you guys and I
Right.
was working with the team, the 3 words that came up were, it was creative first, it was
Hmm.
connected, and then it was trustworthy. That was the 3 like internally that came through, and that just comes with time, right? Of
Hmm.
things happening and people kind of seeing that side of things. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting how now that is being applied to Prime and kind of the vision concept, but we actually are doing it separately. What does Prime stand for and what does Justin stand for? I think that people need to compartmentalize a little bit and separate themselves from maybe their corporate identity, or merge the two depending on how big or small they are, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. And that's a really good point that you bring up. The idea of the architecture of how you structure your personal brand. Like, obviously, like when you started out, you were a real estate agent, and now you have Prime. That's a separate entity, but
Sure.
it's nested under and a part of a larger ecosystem that is the world of Justin Konikow. But you're strategically looking at how you brand each of those individual entities, but it all kind of makes sense within the same ecosystem to provide a cohesive experience, regardless of where someone may enter or leave, or like hang around in whatever channel they might be introduced to you, or how they're interacting with you. So that's something too that I think you've done really, really well.
I appreciate that. And it
Of course.
cognitively just came via time, right? It was constantly doing it every year, looking back. And in the beginning, where it was just me and my wife, and we wanted to sell a house. And then we wanted to sell a lot of houses in one neighborhood. Then we wanted to sell a lot of houses in a city and then a market, then own a brokerage and so on and so forth. When we created the brokerage, that's when I was like, okay, it's bigger than me now. When Mark or Kyle or Victor or Betty or Melissa walk into a listing, they're not Justin. So now we need to create a brand that represents, a higher level vision statement of excellence and quality. And, you're getting a certain type of person, but then
Mhm.
their individual brands nestled under it. And we really do push our agents to develop their own idea of who their customer avatar is and their brand. And don't be afraid to put that underneath the platform. So, walking people through that, I think establishing an ideal client type is very important for people, saying
Mhm.
no to the wrong types of business so you can say yes to the right types of business. Help
Yes.
me, Kat, explain that to people.
Oh my goodness. So I get it. When you're just starting out and you're solo and you got your license and now you're like kicked out of the nest and have to figure out how to fend for yourself. It's very overwhelming, and it's very tempting to
Yeah.
just say yes to everything. But honestly, that'll get you in more trouble than not, especially when you're by yourself, because you have a limited time and resources as one person. So you really need to be thoughtful and strategic about what you give your time to and what you put your energy into. And so to get started, like, I would truly take a stock of and do the self-reflection work that we did when you were in pro,
Yeah.
of defining your brand. Pull the people around you, start there, and really start, jotting down things that come to mind, that things that are, this overarching, idea of who you are, getting those adjectives down, getting your vision and your mission statement. And this isn't sexy work, but it's necessary work, because if
Sure.
you do this work now, you're going to have much more clarity and fortitude and confidence in who you are. And that translates to when you walk into a room and are pitching yourself for new development. That translates to when you are coming on a podcast and speaking in front of hundreds or even thousands of people. Like, you want to have that like core identity set,
Mhm.
because that is eventually what's going to attract, like you said, your ideal client. And what you'll often find is that the person that you're attracting has a lot in common with you, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't want to be spending
Sure.
time with you. Like, that synergy is what creates a really good customer experience, a really good guest experience in hospitality, a really good client experience in real estate. Often I see new agents, they'll start out with first time home buyers because they are often a first time home buyer, either before, after, around that. That might be what kind of motivated them or inspired them to join real estate. And then eventually they get farther into the game, like you did. You and your wife are like, okay, we want to
Sure.
take over a neighborhood. Okay, we want to take over all of London, Ontario. You grow and evolve, and your clientele grows and evolves, just like your team grows and evolves. So, that's kind of like my recommendation: taking stock, doing that core identity, that self-reflection work, and then not saying yes to everything and not trying to do everything, because you can't you can't do everything. Like one person can't do everything. You don't do everything. You've got a team that does the certain things in your business that I'm sure you would agonize and procrastinate till the cows come home if you had to do everything. But knowing that even when you're starting out, there are cost effective ways that you can hire contractors, you can hire virtual assistants, you can hire, a piecemeal team to get you through to grow to the point where you can bring someone on full time. And truly looking at, again, going back to your personality, knowing yourself. So for me, I love branding, storytelling, design, but I'm also very operationally minded. So I love like
Mhm.
structure and tech and organization. I'll tell you one thing that I don't want to do is my own taxes. So I have a CPA.
It's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Another thing is I do not like dealing with ads. I understand ads, I understand the strategy and the analytics, but I have an ads manager that manages that and tinkers in Facebook all day long because
Yeah.
the ads platform changes literally every 5
Oh, it's
seconds.
bananas. Yeah.
If
The
I had
UI
to
is
sit there and deal
terrible
with it.
too. Like the user interface
Oh,
is not super friendly. It's like add
yeah,
set, add. It's just really like your
right.
case what you
And then
do.
it's like not delivering, not optimized, in review, and limited learning. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I have no idea what this is, but I'm going to hire someone to deal with it
for sure.
because they're the expert. Hiring the expert and learning to leverage people who can do things better than you, that frees you up time to do what you love and live to do, which when you're solo, it's really important for you to be as client facing as possible because that's how you're going to grow your business. Being as client facing as possible on social to generate leads through consistent content, being as client facing as possible when it comes to pitching yourself to the press and getting coverage in your local newspaper, doing a podcast, like all of these things, those are the true like things that are going to make a difference in your business. Figure out how to hire a team, part-time contract or whatever it is, to delegate out the rest of the stuff that's more back end that you might not be best at. And that's like one of my best tips of advice, especially for people starting out.
I love it. Actually, I'm going to connect you with a friend of mine. Her name is Christina Smallhorn. She's actually in the stream right now. She has an
Okay.
amazing YouTube channel, probably one of the top real estate agents that anybody would want to model or look up to in terms of really having an ethical approach to real estate. She has a very
Love it.
concise niche. Like she knows that she has a guy. So she named her avatar Frank. So she makes videos on her channel for Frank, knows exactly what his characteristic traits are, now knows his opinions on global warming and all of the other things,
Oh my
to the
goodness.
point where really that's why I think she's excelled so well in the industry. Is she got really narrow on who am I speaking
Mm-hmm.
to, who are my people. And it's really interesting because she's helped me quite a bit with YouTube. Hi Christina, hopefully you're still here watching this. I appreciate you very much. But she gave me a lot of advice in terms of certain things like maybe titling and thumbnailing and descriptions. I'm probably going to care more about it than somebody I'm going to delegate it to, and Justin absolutely loves doing it. But I also spoke to another lady today who comes from the TV broadcast world. She's working on some things with Amazon Prime and Netflix and everything else. And we were on a
Amazing.
chat about YouTube. And I was talking to her and I was explaining things to her, and I could tell she had no interest in the title, thumbnail, description, that side of things. And we said, have your producer or have your right hand reach out to me. I'll explain some concepts that will help you set up the infrastructure. And all you
Mm-hmm.
need to focus on is those impact phone calls, the connections you have from being in the industry that are going to help you level up, and you hire for the things you do not want to do and focus on the things that you do. So I love that you pointed that out. We've also got Matt LaMarche from Atlanta. He is wonderful. I spent a lot of time with him on Clubhouse, so feel free to connect with Kat. Matt, head over to her Instagram, give her a follow. Mr. Wally Bressler, we still got to do the podcast about the sales and the phone calls. Wally, hit me up. Appreciate you, brother. And I laughed too because John Papalani, who's here every week, said we can hear you when we were doing the countdown to the episode. And I said, check, check,
Mm.
check, 1 2 1 2. That's what happens when you go live. So I appreciate you very much, John. Back to the question about, though, I got clarity, brand messaging. I know who my Frank is. When I'm
Mm-hmm.
putting out content, I have to line that up with the content, right? Like I think there's a big miss for people where they're not thinking about that when they're actually pressing record or when they're looking at their feed. So
Mm-hmm.
extrapolate that into a content strategy, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of what that looks like.
Absolutely. So you've done the branding work, you've got your adjectives, you've got your vision and your mission. From those adjectives and from those like personality traits, right, that are defining your brand, that are literally putting what you are on paper, I would recommend writing out statements that expand upon it. Right.
Okay.
So for example, one of my brand values, my personal brand values, is empathy. And it's a huge leading force. And because I find it's from my background in hospitality, you lead with empathy and people will open up and they'll trust you
Mhm.
and they'll feel cared for. And when someone feels cared for, they're going to trust you implicitly with a $500,000 investment or a multi-million-dollar investment. So one of my my leading statements with empathy is always leading with empathy in the conversation and always putting myself in the other person's shoes, considering
Interesting.
like their perspective. Right. So that's the value statement from one of my core values. So when I hop on Instagram stories and I want to share a recent client win, or I want to illustrate someone's client journey, I'll talk about how they came to be in working with me. And I'll say like kind of, I'll interview them like what drew them to me. Oh, Kat, you've got a background in hospitality. I also used to work in hospitality. Like, we know how tough it is. It's absolute chaos. You must understand it. And when we were speaking, like, you were always asking questions. You were always listening. Like, you always like want to lead with that. And this story that I'm sharing about how I help a client go from point A to point Z, that's story content right there. And if
Yeah.
you take out the highlights of it, that's real content. And then if you take a picture, let's say for real estate agents at a closing, they're super excited. You've literally delivered their dream home. Their lifestyle is realized and you guided them through all the ups and downs of it. Taking a picture, putting it on your social, that's a post.
That's true.
So knowing what to post, it really just goes back to knowing what your values are, your adjectives, build a statement from that and have that be the start of a story that you're going to tell, because that's another one of like my greatest content strategies. And you've heard this before. Ryan says it often. Kyle Scott says it often. Facts tell, okay, whatever. They establish, your credibility, but the stories sell. And that's truly because like we're dealing with human beings. We're in the people business. Like if you're in sales, you're in the people business. And stories are what have connected us through generations. They're how we like pass on traditions. They're how we, create those connections. And they're so, so powerful because everyone can relate to a story, especially if you're sharing it from like a really authentic place. And so like if authenticity and transparency and vulnerability, if some of those are your values, lead with the storytelling and figure out how to share that ideal that is so ingrained in your personality and apply it to a story that you've seen in your daily life, whether you're working in a brokerage or you're hitting the streets and door knocking or you're collaborating with a fellow real estate agent on a content idea. Always lead it back to those statements that surround your personality and your adjectives. And those stories are going to basically be on social, for your content, an extension of your brand, just really more built out and more nurtured and more long form, rather than just saying, this is my brand statement. These are my brand adjectives. People are like, okay, cool. So what? Like you have to connect with them through the stories.
Super interesting. I mean, you unpacked so much there. And again, I'm a live case study of that, where we're hosting this on Justin Konikow's YouTube channel. That's where you should go and hit subscribe and all the fun things. But we're covering real estate and media. So what we're discussing today revolves around that niche of, yes, I happen to be in real estate. That's my expertise, but media, digital strategy goes way beyond to any business. It's funny because I'm building this YouTube channel and my avatar currently is people that are likely in real estate looking to break through, trying to feel overwhelmed and kind of get to the next steps. But I'm trying to speak to a larger audience, but I'm starting really, really niche, right? And then if I think about my actual adjectives, say trusted, creative, and connected, the connected piece comes in. The fact that you're working with one of the top organizations on the planet, the most followed brand in real estate, and I happen to be able to get you on the podcast goes to that adjective, right? And I appreciate you making that time, and anything I can do for you and the family, I'm there. The creative aspect of not feeling like we're boxed into a script of this is what we're going to talk about. We're going down that niche. And then the trustworthiness of the relationship. This is an extrapolation of everything she just taught you. But it didn't come overnight, right? And there's bumps and there's bruises. And people sometimes, I think the one thing that I'm thinking of a lot with my content, and you'll see this, Kat, over the next little bit, is a shift from intense creativity, productivity hacks, all these things that I show people that I do, to messaging that I'm far from perfect and my diet's not always perfect and my schedule's not always perfect and I'm a human being. Like, I do think it was almost like when Gary Vee went so far into hustle culture, people forgot who he was and didn't listen to his actual content. They just thought he was a hustle monster. And he shifted and he's like, no, like it's empathy. It's everything we're speaking about now. How would you guide me in terms of creating that messaging or building it into what I've already have? Because there's so much about productivity and like everything I do want to bring that piece in. So I'd love some coaching, and I feel like I should send you a check after this session.
Just buy me coffee when I visit Canada.
Done deal. All the coffee you want.
Oh my God. Coffee is a food group, right? Especially for people like us. So yeah, so that's an interesting shift. And obviously, like as I mentioned earlier, I'm very creatively minded, but I'm also very practical, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to execute on these big grand vision ideas. Otherwise you're not going to move the needle.
Sure.
So, you skewed, one end of the spectrum where it's like productivity hacks and tips and tricks and tactical approaches and all of this. And that's great. But it should be balanced by kind of and nuanced by like what we've been talking about, how leading with knowing what your bandwidth is, knowing what you're great at, what you're not great at, and then gathering and resourcing yourself with the people and the tech that will make your lives a little bit easier. There's there's the idea of like calendar blocking, right? Time blocking. We hear it all the time. And I see it happen where people are like, yeah, I downloaded this template, this calendar block template that someone else gave me. It didn't work for me. Well, of course it didn't work for you, because that block template was made by someone else who's optimal at different times of day, who has a completely different schedule. They're probably in a different industry. Of course, it's not going to work for you. So again, like knowing what is going to work for you, asking for help, not doing it alone, because there's only so far you can go alone, and then weaving in the practical approaches that are going to help you achieve and execute on what feels best, what works best for you, and what works for your team. So kind of balancing it out. But again, starting with just that like self-awareness and that clarity of what you're really good at, what you're not good at, and then supplementing your day-to-day, supplementing and supporting your team with whatever tech that they're going to need, whatever project management tool is going to make their lives easier, and going from there. So like, don't start with someone else's process, because it may not work for you, because again, you might have a different process. You are going to have different goals. You're a different person. You have a different personality. And that's the whole idea of personal branding, right? And what like we focus on heavily in Pro is like, starting with you, we give you the approach, but you have to tailor it and nuance it to who you are as a person. Because at the end of the day, we're always dealing with people, and people are always very, very unique. They're not all the same.
That's a very interesting comment on the question. And I can actually go back a couple of years to the amount of phone calls. I don't think I've ever told you or Ryan or anybody else how many people have actually called me over the years just asking for my opinion, because I am an open book. I'm very transparent, very honest. And I tell people all the time, it's, I think people are looking for the easy button. They see Ryan, they see his success,
Magic
and they're
pill.
just like, yeah. And they want the photo op because they think that's what's going to make their phone ring off the hook. And I'm like,
right,
great looking guy, solid team, everything too. But the photo op is actually the least value of all of the things that I've gotten. It's actually that conversation around, well, there is no one catch-all solution, because one person is going to be really good at cold calling. The other is going to be on relationship building. The other person is going to have a team. The other person is going to be a solo agent. What you just gave me was a really interesting idea. So I will do another video on this channel about, my crazy mind sweep calendar blocking process actually started like 7 years ago by breaking down the main aspects of my life and then writing down like what's important in those aspects, and then looking at my calendar and be like, well, how much time do I have for faith, family, fitness, fun, finances? And then like under fun, I like fishing, photography, paddleboarding. I like doing a mountain biking. I like 57 different things, but I have a family. So maybe if I got to pick like 1 or 2 this week, I'll put those in, and then I'll fill all my family time blocks. Like that's what you're talking about, right? Is getting really clear on your passions beyond just being a real estate agent. Because I think that's the key, is you're not just a real estate agent, or you're not just a business owner. You're something beyond that, right?
Absolutely. And that actually just reminded me, because it's a conversation I have often, specifically with like newer agents, newer salespeople in general. You ask them why they're doing this, and they're like, oh, I want to make a lot of money. I want to make all the money. And it's like,
they always say $100,000. What's your goal? $100,000 your first year. And you're like, okay.
I'm like, oh man, I love it. And I'm like, okay, you have $1 million in the bank. Are you happy? Are you done? And they're like, no, well, I want more time with my family. I want a vacation. I want to invest in a nonprofit. It's like, the money is never the end goal. It's never the true motivation. And again, I'm going to be like,
wait, I want 1,000 followers. Then I want 10,000. Well, now I need 100,000. Now I need
that
1 million.
Escalation.
Like, it never ends.
No, it never ends. And the difference is like the knowing your true motivation and having those honest conversations with yourself about what you actually want to build. Ryan's a perfect example. He could have easily stopped at, hitting whatever ceiling he did at Nest Seekers. He could have easily stopped at launching his brokerage. He set a goal of, a certain amount of agents in 2021, and he doubled that. Wow. And his goals for 2022 are even more insane. But it's not the money that's the primary driver. It's wanting to build that true vision, the true universe, metaverse is a whole nother conversation.
We'll talk about that. I want to plug the universe. What up, Raph? I see Raphael on LinkedIn is saying, what's up?
Hey, Raph. And so, getting clear on what the true motivation is, because that's what's going to make you consistent and do the work that you're not always blasting about on social. That final photo op at the end of like the 6 months of hard work, the 12 months of hard work that you did with us early, in the early days of pro. Um, it really starts with that. It all goes back to like you and knowing yourself and having that clarity, because that's again going to be your North Star in the storm when things get hard, when the phone's not ringing, when the DMs aren't popping off. Like, you
Sure.
need to absolutely have that motivation day in and day out, because that consistency is what is day over day, year over year, going to carry you through and truly bring you from, hey, my wife and I want to sell a home, to, oh, I own my own brokerage now and I also have a media company and I'm expanding in all ways like you have. That's your journey.
That's awesome. Actually, I'm going to bring Raf's profile photo back up for a second because I want to talk about something what you just brought up, the
Hmm.
love of the game. You, Kat, Raf, Sid, all the people on the back end that are just, I've met over the years, they do it for the love of the game. Everybody go give Raf a follow. He does digital strategy and social at SERHANT as well too. And he's taught us a lot. I mean,
Hmm.
his passion for photography and how he came onto the team and how, the growth journey has really been like you're building the plane while you're flying it, but
Yes.
you can do it because it's fun for you, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what we're really trying to unlock in people is, when you get clarity around who you are, you get clarity around your passions and how you want to attract the right clients, you can see how it all creates a through line where when you're creating the content that attracts to who you are as a person, it's
Hmm.
effortless. Like it doesn't feel like work, right?
Yes, it shouldn't. That's the thing. It's like the myth of the hustle and hustle culture and wanting to work hard and burn yourself out. Like, for what? Like, so 40 years from now, you will have clocked 70-hour weeks every single week of the last 40 years? Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, you need to find something that's truly going to light you up, as much as like all of our team. Raph, Sid, Kyle, Mojo, Cassidy, everyone.
Kyle running through the streets with his coffees in the middle of
Oh my God, I
middle
know.
of the night on Instagram. And I love it though, because it just
Yeah.
speaks to his character, right?
It does. He's always moving. He's always going. Like, my mental image of him is me getting taken along for like a ride on the streets of New York, and I'm here in South Florida, but I feel like I'm there. And when I think of Kyle, that's what I think of. Again,
Yeah.
like an extension of him and his personality. So yeah, the love of the game and being able to create, like, truly, that's what's very, very exciting. Creating something that's never been done before, and doing it with people who are as open-minded and forward thinking as we are, and who see the vision and want to come along for the ride and truly like change lives. Like,
Yeah.
that's
It's the right culture and the right community for sure. And speaking of community, I see Antonio Stella. What's up, brother? I see my boy Kendrick Richardson in here, another rising star, absolutely killing it in Chicago. I do want to touch on two more things. I wish we had 3 hours to do this episode. We'll
I
definitely do
know.
a second part to this, but I'll get you out of here for 1:45 EST. If you're on the live stream and you want to ask any questions, now is the time to drop it into the comments. If you have the private StreamYard link and you are in the private Facebook group, feel free to jump on the stream and meet Kat face to face. And we're going to get through leverage and operations. I want to talk about, now we've taken all of those things, but I'm busy. I don't have enough time in my schedule. So how does that lead into leverage and the operations side of the business?
First of all, I love it when agents tell me they don't have time. Like, I almost want to laugh, because you literally have the same hours in the day as everyone
Yep.
who are your mentors, who you're looking up. It's just about maximizing your time through leverage and working smarter, not harder, right? So you look at the operation, everything that you need to function in your business. You've got the financial side of it. You've got whatever your sponsoring broker, your transaction coordinator. Hire a CPA. Don't try to do that shit yourself.
Yep.
Apologize, I don't know if we can swear on this. And so you have that back end, and then you look at your CRM and your organization, right? So I've seen a lot of agents, some of them thrive on CRM, right? Like Niall Lundgren, one of our capstone agents, he went to school for that for many, many years and has been, an advocate of it, because he loves to do it. He loves to like tinker and optimize and get in there and organize that database, so you're getting the most out of it and you're following up as consistently as possible. Now, if you hate CRM work, if you have no idea where to start with CRM work, that would be a great thing to find a VA to hire out, or even just a junior agent on your team to delegate that task to them, so that basically you get the reminders that pop in your phone. Oh, it's time to follow up with so and so. Oh, it's time to host another event. Oh, we've got a community engagement that we've got to put on. But have someone who does that for you. Or if you love to do it, then you do it, right? But CRM is another huge, big factor. And then social. That's probably one of the biggest buckets. It's top of mind for everyone. There's going to be some people that thrive being in front of the camera. There's going to be some people that are really terrified of getting in front of the camera. But I'm telling you now, the way that things are going and the marketplace of tomorrow that we're building, you are going to have to get on camera. So if you are terrified at that thought, if you're solo and by yourself and you just like get petrified at hitting that record button, find an accountability buddy, find someone in your brokerage, find someone in your network, find someone who's killing it and say, hey, I want to learn from you. I want to work with you. I need help in getting on camera and hitting that record button, because sometimes content and video content comes really naturally to some people and it doesn't come naturally to others. So don't try to do it by yourself. Ask for help, find someone who's doing it. And then accountability buddy is a great way for that. When it comes to organizing and producing all of your content, right? You don't need a full video film crew. That's something that you can do when you have the resources and the team to support it. But when you're starting out, get the basic film equipment on Amazon, get a basic social media scheduler, hire a social media manager that will take all of the content that you have and figure out the best times to post it. I do not want you as a salesperson or as a real estate agent asking me, Kat, what time do I post on social? Be like, I don't care. You need to put your face on stories. You need to be putting your face on reels. Have a manager look and constantly read on like later.com or on the preview app that is always coming out with information of saying the best times to post, and have them worry about that. You focus on creating the content. You focus on being client facing and hire the resources that can take care of the nuts and bolts of it, because the highest and best use of your time is not hitting a publish button on a social media app, right? It's about showing up on stories. You've got that content machine running in the background. You've got a manager taking care of it, whether it's a VA or a contractor or someone on your team. There is a way you can make it happen regardless of your budget. So do not let money be an excuse. That's the other favorite thing. Oh, I don't have the investment. I don't have the resources. The gig economy this day and age makes it so easy for you to find anyone within your budget with the bandwidth to help you delegate and deal with those issues on social, right? And then another bucket, PR, right? Press coverage, placements online, placements in your local newspaper, collaborations on podcasts, just like this. We're living and breathing it, right? So, we recommend that everyone create a media kit or a press kit, right? To help like arm them and get their name out there and like, lead with that credibility. If design is not your thing, if you are struggling with designing mailers, designing business cards, designing this, designing that, hire a graphic designer. You're not a graphic designer. I'm not a graphic designer. I have an amazing one that I work with, but delegating that out, all your job is to make sure everyone who you're working with knows your brand personality, knows your values, knows the vision of where you want to go, and whatever you are best at and enjoy doing the most, and whatever activities are the most client facing, the most lead generating for your business, that's where you should be. Find the experts, contractor, full-time, whatever it may be, virtual or in person. Otherwise, interns are another great resource too, like college interns that you know.
Eric, producer Eric actually started as
you
an
were just
intern,
saying
right?
that. Exactly. So interns, there you go. Like work with people who are young. Like that is honestly one of the best things, because they're the ones who know these newer platforms. They're the ones that have their finger on the pulse of what's going on, and they can keep you fresh and innovative too, and get you out of your own head of thinking, oh, well, this was how I was always taught. Well, when you were being taught, that was 10 years ago. And today and where we're going tomorrow is completely different. So tactically, like that's how I would approach delegating out, leveraging resources, and only focusing on the things that are client facing and are really going to be changing the game for your business.
The impact calls. All I focus on is sales and branding, very similar to what Ryan does, right? It's my focus. And people think there's a cost. Well, I got to spend $600 to hire a social media manager to cover it for the month, or I got to spend a couple $1,000 on somebody to shoot and edit and get all my stuff ready for me. But you're buying back time. Right. Yes. So like, meanwhile, you're running around like a chicken head with your head cut off, trying to run to every appointment and shoot and do everything too. And then you're trying to spend hours at night and you're not rested and you're losing listings because of that conversation with people, not having the energy. Get focused. So we're going to do the rapid fire round of questions, and then I'm going to get you out of here. Matt Kelly, thanks for being here, brother. It's nice to see you. So I got a rapid fire sequence of questions that I ask every guest. Are you ready?
Okay. Hit me with it.
Okay. Up to this point, what is the greatest lesson you have learned?
To thine own self be true, period.
I
like in anything in life, personal, professional, or otherwise, if you're not being true to yourself, you're going to have problems. Like,
and your spidey sense will tell you when you are and when you aren't, for sure.
Trust your gut.
What are you learning right now?
I'm learning that it's actually really fun to go on podcasts like this. Secret, this is one of the first ones that I've ever done. And I'm so glad that I got to do it with someone that I already knew. So try new things. I was one of those people a few months ago that was scared to hit the record button. That's probably why I've now made it a tip, right? I'm speaking to like my ideal client that I know is struggling. Let's call her Kate, right? Instead of Frank, I've got Kate.
Nice.
And you know, speaking to them and just getting out of your comfort zone. Because if you want to, you know, remain the same and plateau, just do what you keep on doing. But if you have a bigger vision than that, you're gonna have to get comfortable with getting uncomfortable. So
Well, secret for you, you're one of the most eloquent and well-spoken guests I think that I've had. So people like Matt LaMarche that are watching this, I mean, he's launching his podcast. He's probably looking for people. Christina Smallhorn, if you're looking for guests as well, reach out to Kat. Everybody DM her on Instagram. Next question, probably one of my favorite questions because I have done this a lot. How has failure shaped your life?
Failures are my greatest lessons. I don't trust someone who says they've never failed. I don't trust someone who says they're perfect, who says they've never made any mistakes. And I have mad respect for the people who say, yeah, I completely fell on my face, but I did it. I experimented. I was curious. I didn't let analysis by paralysis slow me down. And from that failure, here's what I've learned. And I'm not going to make the same mistake, because the difference between a mistake and a failure is a mistake is something that you keep doing, right? Which is kind of the definition of insanity, expecting a different outcome. Failures happen once and you learn from them and you make them a lesson. And the greatest character building lessons of my life have come from some of the most fantastic failures of my life. So I wouldn't be me without them.
It's all perspective. I was talking to my wife about that today. I was like, we were talking about just challenges in business, and everybody thinks it's easy to run a brokerage. Definitely not. But I laugh because every time we get a challenge, we look back 5 or 10 years. I'm like, remember when we thought this was the biggest thing in the world? I mean, it's going to be that forever. So again, love of the game. If you can love the game, it's not even an issue. The most important question. What can I do for you? My platform is yours. Where would you like me to push people? Something you're working on, podcasts, anything you want, you let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say let them know about your experience in working with us in pro.
Sure.
So Mojo, who's kind of the director of our pro program, and I'm his chair of pro brand strategy, let them know about the things that we're doing and let them know about the wins that our clients are having, like Samina landing the cover of Forbes.com, Serge landing the front page placement of his local newspaper just outside of Boston. Like the work that we're doing is truly transforming lives. And that sounds cheesy, but only because you don't know, like, and have seen what I have seen and the results that I've seen and the wins and the increases in social following and conversations and GCI and the confidence like that truly people get when they're owning their brand. So please just share your experience truly and honestly, like how it's been for you, because we are just getting started.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting because a lot of my audiences follow the journey, right? And I share quite a bit through my stories and through my podcast. I actually did an entire video on this YouTube channel about how I met Ryan, because I'm a bit of a different beast in terms of how we connected in the beginning and how that led into the relationship. But people will discount other programs and other people just based on their own narrative, right? I did in the beginning. I say that in the video. Like I was like, you know, there was the episode, I think when I met him was at the end of 2018, I think December. And he jumped in the pool, and the TV show really made him look like this character that just very verbose and brash. And I met him. And I'm like, oh, he's an operator. Like he's actually building something. And I was a guy that kind of discarded him in the beginning. But then when I realized how giving he was, I wanted to give back, and that forged the friendship. And, you know, going through it now, I'll see people in groups and stuff pop up and talk about programs and stuff like this. And they'll talk about Sell It Like SERHANT. I got the books right there. And they'll say, oh, you know, it's a pretty basic course. And I jump in and I'm like, yeah. And I do it every single year, because how to work with buyers, how to work with sellers, how to structure your day. I'm always refining that process. But some people will dequalify something they know nothing about. So I'll definitely continue to do that. If you're looking for a podcast guest, Kat is looking to speak. She's obviously very, very good at it. I appreciate you making the time, Kat, and we will definitely do this again sometime.
Thank you. It was my absolute pleasure, Justin. Appreciate you.
Awesome. You're not off the hook. I'm sure we'll be talking lots in the coming months. Take care.
Look forward to it. Bye.
All right, yeah.